keep up to date with our latest videos, please hit the button below. Hi there, welcome to this video from footballbetdata.com. In this video, we're going to be looking at how you create a football strategy based on the filter criterias. So we've recently released a video that we road tested in October 2023 for racing bet data. And what we did there was we exported a massive data into Excel, and then using pivot table filters, we back tested a system, derived a strategy, and then I showed you how you could execute this. Now that strategy was based around set and forget. Now set and forget, what that means is you put your bet or trade into the market and you leave it regardless of the outcome. Now you can do the same with football. You can put bet or a series of bets into the market and leave them, and we can test the profitability around that. But what we're also going to do in this video is explore the benefits, potential benefits around trading, and how you can look at maximizing your profits by placing your bets at specific times in the market, so in the match, and then looking to exit based on sets of criteria. So those sorts of things, not as easy to test because you cannot replicate how the odds move for every game based on the scoring, red cards, substitutions, weather conditions, those sorts of things. But we can suggest means that you can use to start testing. Now, all of these videos are derived around fabricated selections. So we're not saying we want you to copy and do exactly what we're showing in this video. So quite often we won't actually show the precise criteria that I'm assessing, because that isn't really the point of the video. The point of the video is to determine and for you to generate ideas based upon what we're doing, and we're showing you how you can use the data. So I think a lot of the struggles and a lot of the feedback we get from people is, how can I use the data? How can I start manipulating and analyzing it? Now, what we're doing to make that easier in racing bet data is we're adding all these new filters to the dashboard. Now with football bet data, we've pretty much already done that, but I'm going to show you from a raw point of view in this video how we can export and start using the filters in Excel in the same way that we did with racing bet data. But what we have obviously with football bet data is all these selection criteria are based around the statistical predictions, so the score predictions, where we predict the odds for these markets already in the dashboard, so you can filter by them here rather than having to do it in Excel. But like I said, I'm going to do it in Excel for the purpose of the video, and then we can start the testing process. So first things first, I need to generate the output. Now I'm going to select all of these games here, or sorry, all of the leagues. I'm going to select all of the score predictions, and I am going to filter. So what we're going to look at here, and I've had success around this principle in the last couple of seasons, is looking at games with a low amount of goals. So the tendency for people who like to bet and trade is they want excitement. So they want to bet on things happening, events happening, goals being scored, usually being one of the factors. There are people who like to bet on corners and cards, but again, they generally will be betting on overs or events to happen. Whereas my view is that the market inefficiencies come in based around low scoring events or low betting on things not happening. So being not amount of goals, betting on there being a draw, so there's no outcome. People will be betting on a team to win. So generally, I feel that the main value to be had are around backing against the grain. So this system that I'm going to be mocking up for you will be based around low scoring games, nullifying. So we're looking at unders, where we're not expecting both teams to score. We're looking for draws, and those all collaborate together. So when we're looking at a predictions with low scores in it, we're generally looking at a high percentage of goals, a higher percentage of draws, sorry. And we've done videos on our channel in the past where we've examined the statistical relevance around our predictions compared to randomness, and show you that there is accuracy to be had around that. So I'm just going to do a couple of filters here around the predicted both teams to score. So this is just to hone in on the output really more than anything else. I'm going to change that to maximum of 2. We're going to look at predicted draw odds that are maximum of 3.5. And we're going to look at predicted under 2.5. So I'm just narrowing this down. I'm going to filter this more, and I'm going to filter by score predictions when we get into Excel. But like I said in the video already, don't get hung up on what I'm putting in here. I'm giving you examples. I'm showing you how you can use the data on the filter selections here, and then I'm going to show you further how I can filter those in Excel. I'm not telling you this is the way to go and generate your selections. I'm doing it for examples. I'm doing it to get output and show you methods behind the selections. You can use this data. There are millions of different permutations, and we advise, and we know that people already do it, but to go off and generate something for yourself. There's no benefit to be had in me sitting here and going, guys, this is exactly what you need to type in. These are the leagues you need to select. This is what you have to do. Then you leave it, because that is a surefire way for everybody to try and do the same thing, and ultimately that will end up in some people failing, getting different results to others, the market moving, and ultimately anything that was profitable becomes either neutral or negative. So like I said in these videos, there is absolutely no intention of going through and showing you and telling you this is where you need to click. And as in the racing video as well, continual monitoring of performance is key as well, because sometimes things do change. Markets do, leagues do start changing their dynamic, maybe only slightly, but there are specific leagues that you can examine that have low scoring games compared to others which are traditionally high scoring games. But you need to continually monitor that to make sure that the trends are acting as you would expect. Okay, so I've generated a couple of different permutations here around the predicted odds that we use, statistically predicted. So these are true odds. And again, as with the score predictions, this will only become effective on games where the home team has completed 5 games, and the away team has completed 5 away games in that season. That's when these predictions are enabled to be released, because there is a suitable amount of form to be had in that season. That's one of the number of factors that go into creating these. So I'm going to look at the last 2 seasons. Now, we implemented the Betfair odds into our database in June 2022. So before that, we had the average bookmaker odds, but we're going to be talking about using exchange odds. So I'm going to be looking at a smaller selection of time to generate the output. And I will be able to use the closing odds in the Betfair markets. So I'm going to export that to Excel and show you the next steps. Okay, so here we have our exported data from the Football Bet Data dashboard. What we're going to do is pop in some helper columns here. Now, this is something that we always advise people doing. We quite often get people saying when they're creating pivot tables, how do we filter on our filters? So you filter selection at the top. For instance, if they want to look at odds in a certain range, instead of going through and ticking and unticking all of the ones that meet the criteria you want, the best way that we find to use it is to use helper columns in here. Now, these helper columns could refer to a couple of other cells. So you might have 2 cells on another sheet that have your minimum odds range and your maximum odds range or odds value to create your range. And then in your helper column, you will refer to that to say, does the odds market that you're looking at, does it meet your minimum and does it not exceed your maximum? If it does, put yes. If it doesn't, put no or 1 and 0. And then within your pivot table, ensure you refer to this column and create that column as your filter. And then you can easily select yes or the no, whichever way you want to do it. And then toggle with your odds range, refresh your pivot table, and it would show you all of your selections meeting your odds criteria. In this instance, the helper columns we're going to add are under 0.5 profit, under 2.5 profit, and draw. So as I said, we're going to be looking exclusively in this video at games where we want a negative or neutral outcome. So not a lot of goals, not a team winning the game. So a draw, low scoring, that's the aim. Obviously with this testing, we're going to be using the figures based around the full-time score. So this would be almost mimicking a set and forget, but we will also explore potential trading angles as well as we go through the video. So in the under column, what I need to do is put some formula in here, and we can put if and. Now the and logic, what we want to do is check that the Betfair odds are populated. So we're looking at the Betfair under 0.5, so essentially the nil-nil market. We want to make sure these odds are greater than 0 to make sure they're populated. Obviously some games, like we said, before June 2022, we didn't have the Betfair odds in the market. So this would make sure that you're excluding these games from your calculation. And we want to make sure that the game is complete. So we want to use one of these and say, make sure the result column is different than blank. Okay. So we can see here this one's false because this game is being played later today or tonight. So in the false, we will put blank. But if it was true, we want to calculate the returns. And we're going to say if, and the column we want to look at is if the actual total goals is less than 1. So essentially, if it's 0, we could put the same equals 0. If it's true, then we want to calculate the returns. Now the returns would be the Betfair under 0.5 market minus 1 and then times by 9.8. And that ensures that you're factoring in any 2% commission. Now that's if it's true. If it's false, we want to put minus 10 to suggest that that would be a losing bet. And then going back to your main formula, if it's false, which it is here, put blank. And you can see that will populate all the way down. So we've got games in here that you can see there's a positive value in the Chinese game here, and you can see here the Betfair over 0. Under 0.5, 12.33 with your commission would return £158.27. Sorry, looking at the wrong line there, line 59. Betfair under 0.5, 17.15. I was looking at the line above. 17.15 with the Betfair exchange under 0.5 odds would return £158.27. Now it's worth bearing in mind some of the lower leagues, the odds, there won't be a lot of liquidity in the market. The odds might be quite low because the last traded price before the off might be really low. There might be only one bet matched in that market. So it is worth noting that lower the lower down the league spectrum you go, the more sporadic and erratic the results or the odds potentially will be. But as we're looking at backing, all it will do is exaggerate it in a negative way rather than a positive. So we're not over egging it. And obviously when you are doing this or looking at placing any bets, certainly around nil-nils and unders, look at the two markets, look at nil-nil, look at as in the correct score market, and look at under 0.05 in the over-under market as well, because sometimes you'll see more liquidity or a better price in one rather than the other. Okay, so we want to do the same again, but this time for 2.5. So I'm going to copy essentially the same, but I'm just going to change some of these where actual total goals is less than 3. And we want to multiply by the 2.5. Now this market's a bit more resilient and more popular as well, so there should be more liquidity in this market. I'm just going to highlight these two and this one, in fact, I'll do the draw before I add it in, and change the values to a currency with the symbol of the pound. And then we want to look at the draw market as well. So very similar again. So what we want to do is say if, and where's the draw market? So we want to look at the Betfair draw market. This is greater than 0, yes, and the result is different than blank. So if it's true, what we want to say is if result here is D, then we want to take the Betfair draw price, the bracket, because we want to -1, take off the stake, and then times it by 9.8, and then -10 if it was a loss. And again, we want to put blanks in here. So again, that will populate all the way down for you and create your returns based on the outcomes of those games. Okay, so that's step 1 done, adding in these helper columns, and we're going to then put this into a pivot table. So let's call it a pivot. And this is where we can start doing our analysis. So we need to select our data range from the table. We go back to here, and then we select the whole shebang all the way across to A, because we can obviously monitor this, as I've said. So you'll be adding new rows to the bottom of the data on a daily or weekly basis to ensure you're keeping your analysis up to date. So selecting the whole range. And then what we want to do is, so I have cut down this on the dashboard, as you saw, using the filters. But like I said, I want to simulate that we're using the Excel criteria to do the simulation, same as the racing up. The only reason I did some filtering on the dashboard was to cut out the excess, so the games where there's predicted to be lots of goals, over 2.5, both teams to score, etc., which was over 2. But I'm going to further hone this on the video itself. So we want to look at the score prediction, the predicted draw odds, the predicted both teams to score or goals galore odds, predicted both teams to score, yes, and the predicted under 2.5. So this is where I'm going to derive my criteria, which I will do so in a minute. And in the main body of the output, I want to put the leagues, and I want to put how many games meet the criteria. I've obviously not defined the criteria yet. And I'm going to change the report layout to be in a tabular format. And I don't want to subtotal. And actually, I'm going to move this out. I put that in the wrong, but it stands the same. I want to put the date here, so it's count, so number of games. Change the header there. So we've got the league, number of games. Then what we want to do is use our new helper columns. So we want to look at the profit. So we want to change that to sum for each league. So again, all I've done is the filters on the main page, on the main dashboard. So you can see this is a losing strategy, which I would expect. I've not done any filter controls. We want to look at the under 2.5 as well, the profit. So that was our helper column. We're going to change that to a currency. This is just purely for visual. And the draw. Again, we'll turn it to sum, number format, currency. Okay. So you can see actually backing the draw on those, blanket backing would be a profitable strategy. What I want to do now is further hone the predictions. Now, like I said, I don't want people drilling in and looking at this as the critical part of the video. I don't want people saying, well, you said to do it from range 1.6 to 1.9, and that meant I missed a game. So this is purely for demonstration purposes only. So I'm going to blank this bit out, So you can't see the actual criteria that I'm using because it's not really important. I could even do it from the video here, but I want to further hone in with using these predictions to make this more of a realistic prediction model. So I'm using the low prediction scores. I'm using the predicted draw odds that are lower, predicted both teams to score odds lower, predicted under 2.5 odds lower. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll pop back with the video when that's done. Okay, so I've now fine-tuned my filter criteria, and as you can see in these columns now, they are all overall profitable. Now, that is a classic example of backfitting. So I have gone through and tailored the odds and the ranges to make them more profitable. So you've got to be partly aware here that what has happened in the past doesn't necessarily represent what will happen in the future. But the aim of this video is not to demonstrate how you can create something which is set and forget, which essentially, if I'd set and forget against all of this criteria in the past, it would have turned a profit, as you can see in each one of these markets, albeit a small one in the under 2.5. But what it is doing is enabling us to understand using this criteria. So it's not like I've selected teams that begin with a B that play on a Tuesday. I have used relevant criteria in here. So we've looked at predicted scores and a range of predicted scores. We've looked at predicted draw odds, lower predicted draw odds. We've looked at predicted both teams to score yes. So obviously where that is expected, then that there's likelihood is more goals. And we've looked at the predicted under 2.5 goals as well. And again, looking for lower odds here because that determines that the overall likelihood of goals in the game is lower. So there is indeed some theory behind the selections that we've generated, albeit we are looking at historical data. But you need the historical data to guide you towards what you want to look at in the future. So as I've said, using all of these games in this criteria, that would have been profitable. Perhaps what we want to do now is look at specific leagues. Now, you can analyze this into more detail in terms of exporting from our fixtures and results page to look at league dynamics over the seasons. There are various websites as well which will tell you, which leagues have more goals and which have fewer, and generally the odds would reflect that. But what we want to do is look at specific leagues, and I'm going to show you, again, this video is more educational to show you how you can start analysing, giving you tips and tricks that you can use in Excel that you may not be aware of. So what we're going to do is create a specific field here, and we're going to call it rank. And the formula we're going to use here, we're going to use the 3 created formulas. So the under 0.5 profit, the under 2.5 profit, and the draw profit. We've created this sum, but we want to change it to show the values as a rank, and we want to say largest to smallest. So what this will do, if I find rank 1 in here, right down the bottom, MLS. So this is showing the combination of profit across those 3 and showing that this is the most profitable league historically to be finding games with low goal expectation, if you like, draw expectation. Now you can sort on this as well. So if we wanted to sort by highest to smallest to highest, which would in fact be the most profitable to the least profitable, you can get a picture here of what leagues are historically the most profitable to trade on, which might give you an indication when choosing selections. So you can see down here China, French League 2, English League 1, Chile, Colombian, Norwegian second division. So it gives you an idea of which leagues are historically profitable and which ones aren't, and you can form a cutoff really to see where you're comfortable. So maybe say the top 20 or top 25 leagues you would consider with the knowledge that the set and forget has been profitable, that you would be able to use these leagues with an opportunity to trade. Now, I did say that we would speak about trading a little bit more. Now, this is something that, again, I can't tell you how to react, but I can give ideas based on what the data is telling us. So the data in these leagues are predominantly telling us, backing selections that meet the criteria that I've arranged already from the output. Now, all of these I could specifically enter into the dashboard and save that as a system. So we've gone through videos in the past that show you how to save that. So easy recall the next day or the next week, or if you want to analyze a bulk chunk from the last month whilst paper trading, you can set that system up in the save a selection criteria on the website and recall it easily. So what I've done is I've used Excel basically to give you more understanding of how you can use data to manipulate further and test. So these selections, like I said, are pointing us towards, historically, they have been profitable. So backing games where there is a low goal expectation based on the criteria does generate a profit backing in these markets, Betfair markets. Now, to trade, there are other ways that you can approach this, and a couple of tips that I've found. So typically, if you're looking at entering these markets, the first 5 minutes of a game, odds don't change too much from what they are at or around kickoff. Maybe slightly drop. Some instances they'll increase, specifically if there's a lot of action in the first sort of 5 minutes or so. The one thing that does buy you is time. So a goal scored in the first 5 minutes, if you've placed an under 0.5 or backed a 0-0 equivalent, that bet's shot already in the first 5 minutes. So you've got no opportunity to trade. So by buying yourself a bit of time and entering that market 5 minutes or 6 or 7 or whatever it is, have a, like I said, I'm not telling you what to do here. This is recommendations and ways to trade. So we're looking at trading now rather than set and forget. But first 5 minutes, you can look to enter these markets, which gets you over that first, initial couple of minutes of the game where it's fast and furious. Teams might be out on the front foot looking to score, might have scored. If that happens, you've selected a game and you think, I'm going to enter these markets, and you've waited to the 5th minute, but actually there's been a goal in the 3rd minute, you can write that off and say, well, that's one that we've avoided by employing this tactic. So looking to enter in the first 5 minutes is something that I have looked to do in the past when looking at these type of games. And like I said, the odds don't generally change that much, and what you do is you avoid those early goals that kill that bet certainly and impact on the other two. What you can also do is once you've backed into this market, you can look and see the odds depreciation as it gets further and further into the game. So typically 35 minutes approaching half time, you'll see these odds start to move more significantly than they do in the first 20 minutes. The longer, obviously, the game goes without a goal. So one way that I like to play this market, and indeed the under 2.5, I look to remove my liability as I approach half time or at around half time. So what that means is if there's a goal in the second half, I don't actually lose any money. I've taken that liability out. In the instance that the game finishes 0-0, you win a reduced amount because you've removed that liability from the over part of the bet, but you haven't lost anything. You could also look to employ a methodology where as the game progresses through the second half, you look to take more and more profit, look to green up, so you start balancing out the over and the under, so you're returning a similar amount or scaling it how you like. As I said, I'm not telling you a correct method because there isn't one. It's all down to personal preference, but I'm giving you advice on how you can look to explore markets to maximize profits and protect yourself against certain things going against you. In this instance, it's goals because we're looking at games where we're not wanting a goal. The under 2.5. So you can see here, overall, if we played that market, it would be a profitable based on the set of data that I've got. If we're looking at the first 20 or 25 leagues in here, you can see that that is overall profitable. Doesn't necessarily mean it will be going forwards. So again, what I look to do with this market is back it at 5 minutes into the game, and then at half time look to remove that liability. So if we get to half time and there's been one goal in the first half, usually your odds will be around about where they were at kickoff, maybe a bit lower, maybe a bit higher, depending on the dynamic of the game. Things like sendings off, for instance, can obviously impact on the odds as well, which you wouldn't necessarily be able to see in a typical simulated odds movement throughout the game. So you've got to take each game as on an independent standalone basis, really, which is why I'm sort of saying there is no right and wrong method in ways you want to do this. But typically I would look to get to half time and remove any liability on that. Now, what I've just mentioned there is that if there is a goal in the first half, typically you're under 2.5 goal market. Odds would be about where they were at the start at kickoff at half time if there was one goal. But what I would look to do is enter this market once there had been a goal in the first half. So if there's a goal in the first half, the odds on the draw usually go up because we're looking at tighter games. We've specified that. We haven't got a massive home favourite or massive away favourite where quite often the underdog will score first and the draw market odds do not reflect that. They do not change much. In tighter games, they will. So what I'm saying here is that where a team takes a lead in the first half, we can look to enter the draw market at better odds than we would have got in the first half, at the beginning of the game, sorry. So where you're under 0.5 goal bet might have lost if there's a goal, say 18 minutes into the game, I'd look to enter the draw market knowing that we also have our cover bet on the under 2.5. So this would then obviously offer us additional profit should the game finish 1-1 or 2-2, moving forwards where this bet would lose. So like I said, it's balancing this out. I'm giving you indications here because you're looking at markets that are profitable at full time historically in certain leagues. And when we're looking to maximize those profits by entering at different stages throughout the game and then taking out liability as we go. So have a little think. This is something that, like I said, that I prefer to do. Look for negative expectation games, low scoring, draws, so there's not a team expected to win. And I believe there's more value to be had in those markets. And then look to see how those markets react once goals happen or once things happen and tailor it to suit you. I'm giving you ideas, like I said, entering the market a bit later, taking out liability as the first half comes to a conclusion. If a goal is scored, then reacting by putting another bet in. And then, like I said, you can determine as the game progresses whether if that draw market offers an opportunity to green up, whether you want to do that, take out your liability. And the same for the under 2.5 as the second half progresses as well. So I hope the video gave you some insight into how you can get data out with the data dashboard, how you can put your filter criteria into the dashboard, and again, how you can do it in Excel. Then how you can use historic data to look for potential profitable angles, whether that's leagues or based on sets of criteria, and then get you thinking about, okay, this is what it's showing me if I put a bet at kickoff time and leave it to the end of the game, which is one thing. But then thinking outside the box, okay, so how do these markets relate and what should I do if a goal is scored and how can I potentially remove my liability and exposure to the market based on the way the games are going. Hope you find the video useful. Back off now to get on with the finishing off these filters. Shouldn't be too much longer on racing bet data and we will keep you updated as soon as those are available.